There's a rather harmful connotation that animation is meant for children and nothing more. That its messages are so simple that even a toddler could understand them. And if a cartoon is meant for an adult audience, they need to beat the viewer over the head with crude jokes and vulgarity in order to get the message across, like with Sausage Party or Mr. Pickles. However, there are some cartoons that are aimed at younger audiences that can be incredibly mature with their content and messages. Today, we'll be talking about 10 shows that go above and beyond to showcase that. And just to be clear, this isn't like a top list. I'm not really ranking these shows. This is more of a collection of the most mature shows in my opinion. But with that out of the way, let's begin. Batman, the animated series. While not the first animated series based on the Caped Crusader, Batman, the animated series, is certainly the most well remembered, and for good reason. While the previous Batman shows were comical and campy in tone, Batman the Animated Series was dark, mature, and one of the first superhero cartoons that challenged its audience with difficult questions and scenarios. In fact, it's gone down to be regarded as one of the greatest animated series of all time. Taking influence from the darker Tim Burton films, the show was met with a lot of resistance from the studio over its darker themes, including physical violence and the use of real firearms. The dramatic writing of the series set it apart from other superhero shows at the time, and led it to become considered more of an adult show rather than a children's show.
Why couldn't you just let me make believe?
The influence of the series extended from animation and into mainstream Batman canon, with the introduction of Harley Quinn, the tragic backstory of Mr. Freeze, and the art style becoming an iconic look for the Caped Crusader.
There's one thing I gotta know. Why'd you stay with me all day, risking your butt for someone who's never given you anything but trouble?
I know what it's like to try and rebuild a life. I had a bad day too, once.
Batman the Animated Series is one of the most important milestones in the history of the franchise, and it continues to be the best Batman show to date. Superman the Animated Series. How do you top a masterpiece like Batman the Animated Series? Well, trick question, you don't. What you do instead is expand and build upon the base that was set by it, which is exactly what Superman the Animated Series did. Set in the same universe as Batman, as well as utilizing the same back-to-basics storytelling method, the series was given a timeless feel to make the origin of Superman as appealing and universal as possible. When compared to Batman, Superman's list of villains is noticeably smaller, so instead 4 different arcs were established focusing on a singular villain, such as Lex Luthor or Brainiac. Unlike the comics, Superman's powers were noticeably downgraded in the series, so as to make him more vulnerable.
It's not true. I'm not a freak. I'm not. I'm not!
The series explores the sadness and survivor's guilt that Superman carries with him due to being the sole survivor of his planet. Themes such as death and grief are a large part of the series, which is pretty surprising considering that it's a kid's show. And like Batman, the series went beyond children's media, and was, and still is, enjoyed by many adult fans, who consider it to be the definitive version of Superman. The series crossed over with Batman multiple times, and the two were eventually combined into a sequel series based on the Justice League. I mean, overall, this show is responsible for much of what we consider to be the essential characteristics of Superman to this day. And it's also responsible for the worst Nintendo 64 game of all time. So, make that as you will. Static Shock. Okay, last DC show, I promise. Static Shock was the cartoon set within the DC universe that took a more grounded and personal look at the world it was set in. The show stars Static Shock, also known as Virgil Hawkins, a boy who was caught in an experimental gas explosion, giving him the power of electricity. The series explores difficult topics to talk about in a children's show, or rather difficult to explain in a tasteful or effective way. Perhaps the most well-known topic explored is racism in the episode Sons of the Fathers. And we've spoken about this episode before, but to briefly explain, it deals with the father of Virgil's best friend acting incredibly racist towards him when he visits their house.
And now I see why Richie acts like a hood, Maggie. That kid's a bad influence. All his kind are.
Keep your voice down.
It's bad enough I gotta deal with them all day long. Now one of them's in my house.
Another interesting and mature topic this series explores is gun violence, and particularly school shootings. The episode Jimmy follows a depressed boy who is constantly bullied, causing him to bring a gun to the community center and points it at the bully. He is tackled, leading the gun to fire by accident, hitting Virgil's best friend in the leg. And Virgil feels a mixture of emotions as a result, feeling angry at the bullies for leading Jimmy to bring a gun, feeling angry at Jimmy for shooting his friend, and feeling guilty for not seeing the signs of this earlier. It mirrors the very real emotions one might feel after an event like this. And that's really what Static Shock does. It handles real-life events in a superhero setting without feeling disconnected, leading it, in my opinion, to have a very well-deserved spot on this list. As told by Ginger. With all the serialized action cartoons on this list, you might find it strange that a slice-of-life cartoon like As Told by Ginger is on here. However, make no mistake, this show definitely belongs here for many reasons. One of the biggest being character development and continuity, which is pretty rare for an episodic cartoon. Time passes organically in the series, with characters aging up as the seasons go by. In fact, characters wear different clothing in almost every episode, something that is, pretty unusual for an animated series. This just goes to show the creator's dedication to creating a real, believable world. And aside from continuity, the show deals with realistic themes such as suicide, grief, divorce, addiction, and drifting apart from those that you love.
Hi, Dad. This is Ginger. Hi, Dad. I'm calling because I got your letter. Hi, Dad. I was just looking at a picture of your leg, and so thought I'd call.
Many people initially wrote off the show due to its art style, which is completely unfair to the series and the story it told. Thankfully, in its later years, the show has gained much more of a cult following and is remembered rather fondly, with many citing it as a show that grew up alongside with them, helping them feel understood in the incredibly awkward time that is middle and high school. For that alone, this show deserves the praise that it gets. Samurai Jack. Samurai Jack was an incredibly cinematic and stylized cartoon, paving the way for more serious and mature content on Cartoon Network. Created by Genndy Tartakovsky, it was conceived out of his fascination with samurai culture and the Bushido Code. And when we said the show was cinematic, we mean it. The cinematography was inspired by 1970s films, as well as classic Hollywood films like Ben-Hur, Lawrence of Arabia, and Spartacus. The show is known for its minimal use of dialogue. Jack himself rarely ever talks, instead letting the action and the scenery do the talking for him. The show took many stylistic risks, respecting its audience enough to understand what and why these risks were being taken. Ultimately, it paid off, leading to 4 seasons and a cult following that eventually led to a revival in 2017 that ended the series, with a higher rating featuring more adult visuals and language. Notably, this was the first Cartoon Network series to not be included in the Cartoons block of programming, most likely to dissuade viewers from seeing the show as another goofy cartoon. While the themes and story evoke a much more mature and dramatic feel, ultimately it's the visuals, pacing, and cinematography that puts Samurai Jack on this list. Over the Garden Wall. This is perhaps one of the most surprising shows to ever come out of Cartoon Network. Even the art director, Nick Cross, states in the art book that he doesn't know how the show got made. That is due to this show's extremely dark and poetic nature, a stark departure from the shows that the network is mostly known for. Over the Garden Wall follows 2 brothers, Wirt and Greg, as they find themselves lost in a dark forest called the Unknown, a world that resembles old New England folktales and Dark Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales. Throughout their journey, the boys learn of a beast who leads lost souls astray. They hear tales of the beast and the ways that he can manipulate those who are lost. And I'm not going to spoil the series here or say anything more, but trust me, it's pretty messed up, so check it out if you haven't got the chance. The show even won an Emmy for its outstanding storytelling, and will hopefully usher in a new era of dark and enticing children's media. Hey Arnold. What can really be said about Hey Arnold that hasn't been said yet? It never shied away from talking about difficult or mature topics on the daily, and showcased a realistic yet charming world where the good in people shines through in the end. The show touches upon child neglection, the pains of unemployment, and even learning disabilities.
I can't do it, Arnold.
Sure you can. Just take it one question at a time like we talked about.
Maybe that stuff works for you and the other kids. It just doesn't work for me. I'm not smart enough, Arnold.
However, what many consider to be the most mature episode has to be the Christmas episode titled Arnold's Christmas. In this episode, Arnold learns that Mr. Nguyen lived in Vietnam during the war and had a young daughter. He had to give her up in order for her to be able to grow up normally, not surrounded by war and pain. Now, 20 years later, he finally has been able to come to America, but he still doesn't know where she is.
It took me 20 years until I could finally get out of the country. That's why I came to this city. I believe she is here somewhere, but I have not been able to find her.
In a pre-internet era, this was, and still is, a very real situation. Hundreds of people have been separated from their families due to war, and reuniting with them can be really difficult. In the end, Helga comes through and gives up her most wanted Christmas present in order to give Arnold what he wants the most, reuniting father and daughter. She even does so anonymously, showing just how far she's willing to go for Arnold. It truly is one of the most depressing, heartwarming, and mature episodes of a cartoon. Arnold's Christmas showcases the best qualities of the series, and continues to be watched annually to this day. Teen Titans. In recent years, the hate for Teen Titans Go has subsided quite a bit, leaving only a few behind to really protest it. The hatred for it has almost become a meme at this point, so much so that it might be hard to remember what caused the backlash in the first place. Well, comparing the two side by side will remind any unsure viewer. It's not the theme song or the character designs, but rather the tone of the series. Teen Titans Go is completely comedy based and almost unidentifiable from the original Teen Titans. And while the original show did indeed have its fair share of waffle jokes and chibi anime expressions, it was also much more balanced with its drama and emotionally deep moments. These moments range from learning about Cyborg's past before he became half machine, the entirety of Tara's character arc and her eventual death, and the racism against Starfire. In fact, Cyborg fully understands what Starfire is going through, and makes it known to the audience without explicitly stating it.
There are those on other planets who feel Tamaranians are inferior. Trock is what they call us.
So he's calling you a terrible name. And you know that if you punch him out, it'll just confirm all the bad stuff he thinks about you.
Yes. You know what it feels like to be judged simply because of how you look?
Of course I do. I'm part robot.
This is all without mentioning the outright depressing finale, which, without spoiling too much, is essentially about how nostalgia means nothing, and that change is inevitable whether you accept it or not. In a sense, perhaps that's how people should look at Teen Titans Go. Nostalgia can blind you, but it doesn't mean you have to let go of the memories. Enjoy what you had, but don't dwell on what you lost. This show was mature enough to state that in the end. Avatar: The Last Airbender. In a time where Nickelodeon was known for its goofy comedy shows, Avatar: The Last Airbender seemed to come out of nowhere. However, it turned out to not be only one of the most impactful cartoons of the decade, but possibly even one of the most impactful shows in general. In the world of Avatar, there are 4 elements which certain people can control: fire, earth, water, and air. The main character, Aang, is a reincarnation of the Avatar, master of all 4 elements, and the one who can bring balance to the world. The series explores themes of genocide, immigration, abuse of power, industrialization, and preservation of culture. Almost every episode explores an entirely new theme that is rare to see in children's media. The series was unafraid to showcase difficult or even upsetting moments, such as Aang's reaction to learning that his entire race has been massacred, or the pain that Katara feels when she gives into performing bloodbending, which she vowed to never use. Despite being a happy-go-lucky child, Aang goes through a wide range of emotions early on with rage and grief, and he eventually learns to control these feelings as he matures. The character of Zuko, a parallel to Aang, is also widely praised for his growth and tremendously executed arc. Zuko teaches that one's birth does not determine who they must be, and that your destiny is yours to control. Sometimes family is abusive, and you don't have to stand by them. We could go on and on about the qualities of Avatar that deserve praise, but this would just turn into a list of the greatest themes in Avatar then. If you haven't given the series a watch, go check it out. Find out why this is considered one of the greatest shows of all time. The Legend of Korra. After half a decade, the Avatar series returned in the form of The Legend of Korra, a sequel to The Last Airbender, that follows the journey of the next Avatar, a waterbender named Korra. The series was met with praise from critics, although mixed reviews from fans, with many feeling as though the writing wasn't as up to par as the original. Unlike the original series, The Legend of Korra has an entirely new arc each season, meaning that there is no overarching plot. Season 1 deals heavily with politics and privilege, shown especially with the non-benders, forming their own rebellion called the Equalists. The second season deals heavily with spirituality and religion, while the third season deals with the negative sides of those same themes, as well as Korra's own personal trauma being stripped down to her most raw emotions. The final season deals with a dictatorship that mirrors Hitler's rise to power. Reception may have been shaky, but one can't deny that The Legend of Korra tackled many themes that only a show set in the Avatar universe can do. And for that, I think it deserves a spot on this list.